Hello, everyone. My name is Kristin Snowden. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. And this is a once monthly webinar through sexandrelationshiphealing.com where we talk about all things related to relationships with a special focus on relationship crises and how to navigate out of those. So today we're going to be focusing in on, is infidelity and sex addiction and engaging in addictive behavior emotionally abusive? Is just the act in and of itself abusive? And so I think this can be informational for both the acting out person, I'm going to call them the betrayer, and the person who has loved and been in relationship with someone who's kind of been leading a double life, and I'm going to call them the betrayed partner. Because again, I try to be comprehensive, so I want to save space for the fact that infidelity is betrayal trauma, and then infidelity through sex addiction behaviors is betrayal trauma, and then just even abusing substances and leading a second life and secretly using finances to support that habit can also create betrayal trauma. So I kind of want to honor all those different categories. So I'm going to use general descriptors. But the acts, all of those types of behaviors, infidelity, addiction, sex addiction, porn use, etc., can be some of the most devastating, destructive experiences one experiences in their life. It truly turns their lives upside down. And unfortunately, oftentimes when we walk into treatment or seek out professional help from those who aren't properly trained and experienced in this subject matter, there will be a real quick focus and a hyper focus on stopping that behavior, right? Stop the affair, stop the sexual acting out or the porn use or the problematic use behaviors, stop the substance abuse. But there is seldom a focus on helping the betrayer and the betrayed partner heal from the fact that there has been months or years of emotional abuse going on. And there has to be time spent on that subject because it's one of many facets and many layers that exist when a relationship dyad or just even a single person in a relationship experiences betrayal trauma from infidelity, addiction, sex addiction, etc. The path toward healing a relationship or healing from this betrayal trauma cannot and should not just have a focus on just stopping that behavior, right? Stopping the substance use, stopping the affair, stopping the sexual acting out. That is not enough to make a betrayed partner feel safe again, and not enough to repair the damage that's been done in the relationship. Because there is always an element of lying, sneaking around, gaslighting, living a double life, and those things in and of themselves are the emotionally abusive components to them. And so that has to be part of the healing process. I feel like Dr. Rob Weiss was one of the pioneers in helping healing couples and addicts understand this. He has his own words, and he helped me understand that clinically. But another clinician that I think has done an interesting job of talking and focusing on this specific subject is Dr. Omar Minwalla, and he uses all his own different terms, but it's, kind of the same stuff that we talk about, which he uses the word integrity abuse disorder. So we're going to talk right now about how these types of engagements, these relational crises, infidelity, addiction, discovering addiction, affairs, how they are also emotionally abusive, and help you develop a language for what's going on in the relationship that's causing that abuse and that trauma to develop, the complex trauma that's being developed because of those behaviors. And the hope is that you will be able to take this language into your therapy sessions, your individual therapy sessions, your couples therapy sessions, and actually work towards effective healing to transcend it. So let's start out by giving you some basic definitions. So betrayal trauma. Betrayal trauma is generally defined as the trauma, and remember, that's when anytime your nervous system gets overwhelmed and actually your brain starts wiring and rewiring around a significant event or multiple events around you. It affects the way you engage in relationships. It's the way your body wires and reacts to things. So it's the trauma that you experience when a trusted loved one or person in your life betrays you by, going back on explicit or implicit promises, commitments, engaging in lying behavior, or behaving in ways that are just shocking, that you did not know that was their personality, what they do, who they are. The definition of infidelity is a violation of a couple's emotional or sexual exclusivity, or their vows and commitments to one another. So if fidelity is faithfulness to a person, duty or commitment, etc., or pledge to someone or a belief, infidelity is the opposite of that. Substance addiction, substance abuse addiction, substance abuse disorder, whatever the term is you feel comfortable with, is excessive use of psychoactive drugs such as alcohol, pain medications, any kind of illegal drugs that leads to physical, social, relational, or emotional harm. Sex addiction, again, there's multiple ways to define that, but it's essentially any kind of problematic sexual behavior that can manifest in multiple ways. Chronic affairs outside of marriage or monogamous relationship, seeking out massage parlors, prostitutes, problematic or chronic pornography use, and using finances to support all these habits, illegal sexual behaviors, dangerous behaviors, and these behaviors lead to physical danger, relational problems, and emotional harm to not just yourself, but to those that you love. Then there's the discussion of what's physical abuse versus emotional abuse, because this is the hang up. And Dr. Omar Minwalla discusses that sometimes, unless we have cuts and bruises on us, we have a really hard time understanding what's intangible, those emotional wounds, the complex trauma is not visible on the outside. We usually can't see it, so we have a hard time conceptualizing it. So we often can point out physical abuse, which is defined by any kind of non-accidental physical injury inflicted by one person to another, right? We can sometimes be like, yeah, that's inappropriate. You don't touch, you don't hit, you don't do physical, you don't cut, harm, strangle, things like that. But we have a hard time knowing that there's those inside scars and damage that's done through emotional abuse, which is any kind of non-physical behavior that inflicts emotional or psychological harm to another. It can make that person feel threatened, inferior, in deep shame, degraded, confused, uncertain, and scared. So again, as I'm going to be talking about this, I'm going to be talking about the betrayer as the person who has engaged in infidelity, has engaged in substance use or sexual addiction, and the betrayed partner as the person who's in relationship or their loved one is the one engaging in those behaviors, just for clarity. So how is addiction and infidelity emotionally abusive? Well, many of these acts, when you're engaging in infidelity, addiction, etc., the following are elements that are prevalent and present within the intimate. This is what the intimate partner experiences when you are out engaging in infidelity, addiction, etc. So there's pretty much always chronic patterns of lying, either directly, like to the person's face about where they are, who's calling, where the money went, or by omission, just avoiding the answers. Gaslighting. I have lots of webinars on this topic. I'm very passionate about it because it's a very insidious form of emotional abuse. And it's psychological manipulation where you make the person believe that their reality, so what they're seeing, feeling, perceiving, needing in life, is not accurate. So, I always use why are you getting blocked phone calls? I don't know. Maybe you need to stop being so jealous and obsessive. And why are you looking at my phone? What kind of person looks at someone's phone? And maybe you need to become more secure about us instead of looking at my blocked phone calls. But that person's reality is that they're not feeling safe. We have gut instincts and feelings, and we're going to talk about that further. But they're trying to seek clarity and safety about some red flags and things that just aren't sitting well with them. And instead of that partner being able to sit and validate or help them feel safe, they don't want to because they want to hide their secret behavior. They instead just invalidate them, make them feel like they're crazy, like their gut and their reality is off. It's highly abusive. Other things that we see when people are engaging in infidelity, sex addiction, and other types of addiction, patterns of denying or avoiding responsibility for what they've done and how those acts have impacted their loved ones. Patterns of blaming the partner or making it a relationship issue rather than the betrayer's own choices, the way they've decided to cope with life, the way that they've chosen to deal with their emotions, or the fact that maybe they're unhappy or they're not getting their needs met. Dr. Rob's always been so great about saying, if you're unhappy in a relationship or your job or life, you always have choices. It doesn't automatically entitle you to go sneak off and have this secret life to manage your uncomfortable feelings, or you feel like you're not getting your needs met, right? We all have choices. We also see patterns of defensiveness. So the betrayer or the addict may be stonewalling, provide little partial disclosures. Okay, yeah, I did have feelings for that girl, but she's gone now. So partial disclosures, partial snippets. Oh yeah, maybe I did drink a little bit the other day, but I'm not doing it anymore. Using threats or intimidation to shut down their partner. If you keep checking my phone, you keep following me or asking questions, I'm not going to want to be with you anymore. You like me the way that I am, or you get out of here. This is who I am. This is who you married. Deal with it. Patterns of betrayed partners feeling chronically diminished, made to feel like they're crazy or the unhealthy one in the relationship. Or there's also chronic experiences of sexual rejection or emotional abandonment, where they don't understand why it's so hard and so difficult to engage their partner on an emotional level, or suddenly have them kind of make them feel undesirable and rejected. Patterns of going back on commitments and promises. Patterns, so even saying, okay, fine, I won't drink anymore, or okay, I won't talk to the affair partner anymore, or okay, fine, I'll start going to meetings, and then just them stopping, not doing it anymore, just not following through with commitments and promises. Betrayed partners will often get these gut feelings that something is off, that they feel confused by their betrayed partner's behaviors, but they can't quite put their finger on it. They can't put their pieces on it. Why is he so explosive? Why? And I don't mean to just say he, this is gender neutral, but why is he or she explosive? Why are they being so secretive? Gosh, that person they hang out with I don't feel safe or comfortable with that. What's going on there? There's also huge elements of financial infidelity, right? So you can experience betrayal trauma just from, I thought we had a retirement, and he or she went off and spent our entire retirement on his or her acting out behaviors. There's also exposure to harm, right? Exposure to being exposed to dangerous people, other unhealthy people that were involved in their acting out behaviors. And one of the big things that I think Dr. Omar Minwala helps people understand is you have to imagine how shocking it is for a betrayed partner not to just find out that their partner was having an affair or engaging in sexual acting out behaviors or substance abuse issues, but that it's done in this like whole other world of people and places and activities that the partner was never aware of. meeting these people they didn't know about in these different places and different characters. And they assume most of these characters, if they're engaging in nefarious behaviors with them, that they're bad characters, right? They're very threatening to them because they are helping their partner act out and do nefarious things. And so imagine just cracking open this whole other world. I mean, Dr. Marman Walla calls it the secret sexual basement of that was there underneath the whole time and we never knew. Like imagine how abusive in and of that just that very thing, how that can create what we call complex trauma. It's being exposed to these elements month after month, year after year. And it shapes the betrayed partner, rewires their brains, rewires their nervous system. Now, they find that sometimes the betrayer will own what they're doing, right? They might get caught and fess up to the sexual acting out, to the affair. Yeah, I drink. But they'll struggle with owning the abusive piece, owning the part about how their behaviors, their choices were psychologically and emotionally harmful to their loved ones. One of the reasons why is because the betrayer, the addict, the person who's kind of acting out, just by virtue of their actual coping skills, like what their choices are, they're deciding instead of doing life transparently and openly and honestly, they're going out and kind of seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, using unhealthy coping skills, hiding it in secrecy. So just by knowing that about them, we know that they are have a very low tolerance for uncomfortable emotions. They can compartmentalize and put things in the cupboard, pretend like they're not there. And they will wrap themselves up in this kind of warm blanket of, oh, well, what he or she doesn't know won't hurt him or her. It's my body. I can do what I want to my body as far as like the drugs go. Or I think I've heard a lot, oh, I give him or her a great life. It doesn't matter what I do off on the side. He or she doesn't even know, so it doesn't matter. These are all things that I hear to help them kind of wrap themselves up in this blanket of minimizing, rationalizing, so they don't have to actually realize that they're capable of doing such infinite harm and damage to the people that they do love. But they just don't want to know that their behaviors and choices impact them so greatly. But because of that, you can see how owning that and knowing it and realizing it is such an important part to the healing process. You really need to know, and maybe not right away, often right away when you're going to couples therapy, it is about cessation of the habit, abstinence of the behavior. And that's an important step to help create a stability. But at some point, the therapy and the treatment process has to include that emotional, psychological abuse that the betrayer was willing to engage in to hide and protect his or her behaviors, and know and understand how that has rewired his partner, and be respectful and understanding of that, empathetic of that. Empathy building is really important to that healing process. Now, one of the things to note is that when you jump into couples therapy or individual therapy right after discovering this stuff, it's really hard to go straight into like, oh, so you're an emotionally abusive, like narcissist. That won't work. Usually there has to be an element where the therapist or whoever is engaging with the addict or the betrayer has to build up rapport and trust, right? They're not going to receive any information from some person coming off the street calling them an abusive schmuck, So there has to be some kind of rapport that's established. And not only that, but a slow level of tolerance has to be built up where this addict, who doesn't normally know what to do with really yucky feelings. You know, they've been sticking it in a cabinet for quite some time, like forever. There has to be a slow buildup. And that's why I think the 12 steps are so great, because the 12 steps help that addict slowly develop a tolerance for uncomfortable feelings, engaging others, accepting others' influence, including a higher power. And that sets the stage to start helping them realize, you know, steps 4, 5, 6, and 7 are about this, how you're capable of doing some really terrible things, you know, that we are these perfectly imperfect beings that deserve to be loved, but holy geez, you're capable of doing a lot of harm if you don't stay on this path towards recovery. And not only that, empathy building, I need to understand what I have done, my addict behavior, my affair, my bad choices, how they've impacted my loved ones. And so when I see my partner react, you know, have a really high response, it's not like, God, when are you going to get over this? I haven't drank in a year. Or God, when are you going to get over this? And they could just be like those blocked phone calls, just even though it was just spam and it wasn't, I get these memories of how many times I asked you and you just made up this diabolical lie and said it straight to my face, right? Understanding how those years and years of emotional abuse, complex trauma being developed in your partner can help you with the empathy and help support that partner, betrayed partner, to heal. So, because like I said, this is a complex trauma that happens when you're living in years of emotional abuse, and it impacts your partner's ability to engage in all relationships, not just a relationship with you, how the betrayed partner views the world, views themselves, their self-image, their confidence level, their ability to trust their gut gets completely destroyed. And betrayed partners also commonly suffer physical manifestations of the years of confusion and trauma and abuse that occurs, right? Lots of gastrointestinal issues, major allergies, inflammatory diseases, etc. It's really interesting because to jump over to betrayed partners, this emotional abuse really deteriorates and erodes their ability to trust their own instincts. At one point, you know, we all have this second brain, this gut instinct where this person doesn't feel right. I pick up something's off. I see this face expression. We're all meant, and you know, I talk about this in our fear, stress, survival responses and other webinars, but we are meant to pick up nonverbal cues if something's congruent or not. And so, and we're meant to have that validated by our trusted loved ones, by our trusted community, be like, yeah, you're right, that person is off. Or yeah, you're right, I am stressed at work. It's not about you. This thing's going on at work and that's why I'm having a hard time. Like, we're meant to check in with our environment and say, hey, this is what's coming up for me. Is this right? But when a betrayer is constantly invalidating you, gaslighting you, telling you that you're crazy, that your gut's wrong, it slowly erodes at those really important instincts that you need to survive. So at one point, you have to choose, I either erode my relationship with my intimate partner, my teammate, you know, the person who I have kids with and a life with and memories with, because then I'll just not believe him or her. Or I have to erode my instincts and just say, okay, well, maybe I am overreacting. God, maybe I am jealous. You're right. I do have really low self-esteem, and who would like this? Like, this isn't lovable. I'm lucky he or she loves me in the way that I am, because God, this is like a hot mess. Right? Like, those are the choices that you eventually have when you live in that type of relationship, is you either turn away from the partner because my gut's not matching what he or she is saying to me, or you turn your back on your instincts. And that's a whole other world. So a lot of the betrayed partner recovery process is about rekindling and reconnecting with those instincts, setting up boundaries, working on their own shame to say like, oh no, I know what my stuff is and this isn't one of them. or, I have the right to ask for needs to be met. When I pick up on instincts, I need to develop my new community who can help validate what I'm feeling and thinking instead of having it invalidated. I need to rewire my brain, re-engage the world in relationships, because the other way I was doing it was very traumatizing, et cetera, et cetera. So when infidelity, a sex addiction, substance abuse disorder surfaces, and they come into therapy, both things have to be discussed. We have to own the fact that there was the affair, infidelity, whatever happened, whatever that person did, their acting out behavior, their poor coping choices, so to speak. Own the addiction, the sex addiction, what is problematic, what is not working, what did they do there that's causing the harm. But then the second part has got to be owning how all those behaviors are a part of a chronic abuse disorder, chronic lying, dismissing others, that person's needs and feelings, putting them in harm's way, lack of empathy, chronic deception, minimizing feelings, and how those are currently creating or currently feed, the betrayed partner's nervous system and the way they show up in that relationship. Because often it's the second part that's the most traumatizing and painful part for the betrayed partner. So this is not just important for the betrayed partner, but it's also, as I mentioned before, a huge step towards the betrayer owning what he or she's done, what he or she's capable of doing if he goes back to his or her former behaviors. And also, oftentimes, addicts or someone acting out in infidelity, they kind of need to be dunked in the shame swamp a little bit of like, yeah, you can do some pretty horrible things. Like this is what you're capable of, before we can kind of go back and build them up and say, okay, now that you know that this is like the shame that you've been running from and that you thought you couldn't bear, we can start developing a shame resiliency practice around it. So you don't let it own you and paralyze you to the point that you run out and make these really bad choices and seek out pleasure and distraction and escapism to avoid all these yucky feelings, because now we've like had you sit in them and now you can survive. You can lean into your recovery community. You can have your higher power. You can pray, you can meditate. You can eventually maybe lead into your partnership where you heal and you show up and you're transparent today and you're honest today. So those are all really important parts to the healing process. And so I'd encourage you to just, this is the end of my part of the lecture. We're going to take some questions, but go ahead and email me if you have any other additional questions, and let's answer some questions.
Let's do, but email her too. But I had a really great note from someone that was, connecting with me for some other resources, but they talked about having completed the workshops that you do online with betrayed partners and how valuable it was. So for betrayed partners, consider the online work groups at KristinSnowden.com. You can find information there. So I refer many betrayed partners as part of a whole process. Like so much of what you're talking about, even like, because I thought I really like that you said at some point that you can't just start with this stuff, because I thought, addict, first thing they're going to do is A, be defensive. B, they're going to go, I'm triggered. I can't handle the emotional, I'm going to go use, and then everything continues. So I really do think it is doing the work. And I love that you pointed out about the steps, because exactly what you said, we're going to do a searching and fearless moral inventory. And that is about our behaviors and it is how we've impacted. And so, 4 through 9 is, we're making amends. All of that is one step then the next. So it isn't like, I don't want to write this down because, and you've talked about this, I don't want to write this down because I'm going to have to make an amends, so I'm just going to leave it off. We have to own our stuff. And I have people that can't handle the title of addict. I don't want to be a sex addict. Okay, let's, compulsive sexual behavior has been problematic for your intimacy. Whatever. Yeah. But
chronic infidelity.
Yeah. I mean, because I think abuser, has such potency, that like looking at how has this harmed your relationship? How has this harmed your partner? The shame swamp that the betrayers go through, and I'm thinking the betrayal swamp that, the trauma swamp that betrayed partners are in. And it is a process. But, I think we're both here to tell you there is hope, and so continuing the process, not giving up, at the first roadblock, that you see, because there are, but it's so worth it, the relationship that you can build, as a betrayer, as an addict, if you're willing to take responsibility, it's meaningful. Oh, the other thing is you talked about the lying. Like, I can't tell you how many partners are going like, it's the lying, lying. And so, the omission or commission, both of them are just devastating to partners. And, I don't think you can really repair a relationship if the chronic lying, continues. So
I agree. I feel like that's one of the biggest errors for therapists who aren't especially trained in this. Like, I've had an individual client whose partner was a sex addict. It manifested in inappropriate work affairs, like 4 or 5 affairs over and over again, lots of other inappropriate things, pornography use. And he was in recovery, but he was like lying about little things, right? Like, not telling the wife that the son was smoking pot, which again, that has nothing to do with their relationship. But an untrained therapist won't understand why that infuriates her so much. And she's so reactive in couples therapy, but they don't realize the like chronic and intense and level of deception that they've had to endure. And I actually like it. I like that they're getting upset because that's the appropriate response when someone lies to you. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, it was just about this one little thing. Oh, well. No, it should be infuriating.
Yes. And how do we fix that? We stop lying. And if we lie, we turn right back around and say, what I just said to you or what I neglected to say to you, it's just as important. What I left out of the message is this. And so all of that is critically important. So, okay. So first question, I am struggling finding balance between having compassion for my partner and respecting and protecting myself. Any tips? Oh, yes. Please share.
Yeah. Well, speaking of gut instincts, we will naturally feel more compassion towards someone who is showing empathy and compassion themselves. Like, the more devoted that they are to their recovery process and to making amends and to not doing this behavior anymore and to changing all these damaging, harming behaviors, will naturally trigger compassion and respect in them. So when I'm seeing this, I'm always wondering how devoted and committed is your partner to the recovery process. And I think the best protection is if you just uncovered this recently, you're going to struggle with compassion, respect, and protection in your relationship dyad, which is why I always encourage group work, go to betrayed partners groups, or even if you are the recovering addict, go to your recovering. You're not going to get much empathy and compassion from your partner right now because of what's happened. So you have to kind of go to your corner and develop community there. And then eventually you can kind of meet in the middle, engage in couples therapy, and start doing healing from there.
And they tagged on that it is from a betrayed partner.
Yeah, so it's gonna be hard if it's the beginning, and you probably need to seek out safety and protection in your recovery community, your betrayed partner community, and other people who are struggling similarly, to get your feet on the ground and get your kind of gut instincts back and get that kind of fiery anger. It's okay if you lack compassion right now. Sometimes we need to be angry for a while, and not violent, but angry, angry, but with appropriate ways of letting it out. And that's okay.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I think having compassion for the brokenness of that person, great. Having compassion or buying into manipulation, no, then absolutely lean into your taking care of you. I think you having healthy boundaries for you is critically important. And getting the support, just like Kristin was saying, getting the support for you in the place you're at. So, kind of setting aside, okay, I'm going to be compassionate for you because you're a broken person. And, particularly if they're working on being in recovery, great. You can, but kind of watching from a distance, and really seeing what their actions are doing, not just their words. So
Yeah.
Lean into taking care of you.
Yeah.
The next question is, what do you think about this one? My former partner said after I stopped chasing him after 12 years and working on myself after he left me, I didn't think I would stay with you. So he basically was playing me like a cat and mouse, and he just enjoyed being chased by women. And also his exes behind my back. He just wasted my years and never intended to stay with me. I'm 18 months in and still grieving and in shock, acting like a boy of 18 just looking for girls. This was supposed to be an adult man. Disgusting.
Yeah, I think those are all reasonable feelings to feel. I think as you get farther into the betrayed partner community and you kind of learn how all these different addicts, their childhood histories and their acting out behaviors, you start developing, as some of my clients say, I got a PhD in the subject that I never meant to get a PhD in. But I think that the anger starts subsiding and you start just feeling sorry for them. You realize it comes from dark trauma on their own end, and thank God I'm not a part of that anymore. And I'm glad that I got off that chaos carousel. But yeah, right now you're understandably in anger and hurt and abandonment and rejection, and I completely validate it all. It is not unreasonable, and there is a path out to heal and transcend it.
I'm so glad you're doing work on you. He's in your past. But one of the things I'm looking at is, Dr. Rob talks about, when you're dating someone, have a posse. I bet during those 12 years, someone might have been going, maybe he's not such a great catch, and all that. So getting people that are able to tell you truth, that have you as the person that they care about, and helping you navigate who's going to be a good fit for you. I think as you heal and eventually, get back into the dating world, making sure that you've got people, your squad, your posse, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, 12 years, you just got the PhD in, a bad actor. Somebody used that the other day, and I was like, yes, you got the PhD in a bad actor, and you won't have to repeat that, and you can be on a posse for other people. So everything we learn, we have the ability to turn it to good and use it in a different way. Heal first, but I'm glad you're here. But
And 18 months in, this might be a great time to explore engaging trauma treatment.
Yes,
because
great
honestly, idea. I mean, remember, years of chronic emotional abuse and the cat and mouse game, as you say, wires your brain and your body. And there are steps, I have several webinars on betrayal trauma and betrayal trauma treatment. I just did one last month on how to unwire these trauma responses in your body, EMDR, somatic experiencing, IFS, internal family systems, etc. And they're effective. They help. So that might help you move out of the grief state.
Okay, next question. What workbooks would you recommend to help a person specifically, including dodging the negative triggers on social media and in the entertainment industry?
Right. So I'm assuming, again, this is a betrayed partner who's realizing that just that your partner stopping the behavior isn't helping you feel safe. You still see things on social media that trigger you, maybe scantily clad women or things in the entertainment industry that you find are triggering to you. Again, I think EMDR is a great thing for that, because it helps you go down the rabbit hole about the stories that you're telling yourself, and maybe childhood trauma as well, that are creating that trauma response. Because really, when you think about it, the interesting thing about trauma is that person you're seeing on social media is not actually threatening you in any kind of way. They're on a screen. So usually it's your previous trauma, your current trauma, and the stories you're telling yourself, the shame you've experienced around it that is creating those triggers in you. So any kind of work that lets you dive into those things, right? The thing I always like is the story I'm telling myself, right? So when I see that person on social media, I feel myself, get this way. Okay, where am I feeling it in my body? So maybe, I guess, as I'm saying that, maybe DBT stuff would be good, because dialectical
I was
behavioral
just to
therapy
say.
is a focus on slowing each one of these things down. Or even I also like internal family systems, right? Because those are kind of honoring all the different parts of yourself. So there's a part of you that's like, wants to heal and get through this and transcend it and not have it be so triggering to you. Then there's a part that sees this person on social media, and there's a part that grieves, like, oh, why is our society so focused on sex, and sex is such a commodity. And there's a part of you that's appropriately angry and upset about the exploitation that occurs because of that. And internal family systems, like, explores kind of all those facets and gives each one of them a voice, because we want to fight back those negative triggers and be like, ew, gross, I don't want to react to seeing like a scantily clad woman on social media. But the truth is like, why? I mean, there is a sadness and a grief about how our society does commoditize sex, and it's at the cost of like people giving up their souls for it. And so do you want to lose that element? Like, do you want to lose that part of yourself that acknowledges the sad things that happen? And so it's things like that. So I hope I answered. Like, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, has some great workbooks. I think internal family systems has some, or at least some books with some workbook stuff in there.
And I think it's always interesting to look at why am I triggered by that? Like what, and sometimes like it might trigger you this day and it didn't, 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm,
So what else is going on for me? What do I need to do? We use hungry, angry, lonely, tired, halt, and I use stress too. And so like, I always know my bandwidth, and I'm going to be more triggered by things, if I'm too tired, if I'm too hungry, I mean, all of those things. So none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. So what do I need to do, to make sure that I'm, attending to me, that I'm, that I'm in the best space I can be in, understanding that if a trigger comes up, it's, that I'm human. So what can I do? So yeah, the DBT, can be very useful. Grounding. I mean, there's lots of things in the moment that just go, yep, that's out there.
Watch my YouTube channel. We talk about shame. We talk about healthy coping skills. We talk about the fear, trauma, stress response, and tools to mitigate those responses. I mean, sexandrelationshiphealing.com's content is excellent. You don't even necessarily need workbooks. Sometimes you just need to like get the stuff in your brain. Listen to the podcast when you're walking, before you go to bed, or I don't know, when you wake up in the morning.
Next question. Hi, Tami and Kristin. I have a question about when my husband comes out of residential therapy. He tripped up a first couple of days of challenging my boundaries, but when I held the line, that's important with them, he seems to have really accepted that this is the new relationship wholeheartedly. My question is this a honeymoon type thing, or can I relax and trust this?
I think you could tell yourself that you want to relax and trust this, but I don't think your trauma body keeps score, and it ain't going to let you relax and trust this. There's going to be that waiting for the next shoe to drop. And understandably so. Like, I think it's great that your partner is leaning into recovery wholeheartedly. It also makes sense that he pushes back, and this is a new relationship he doesn't like and he's not used to, and he's just building up a tolerance for uncomfortable conversations and uncomfortable things, and it's going to be 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, 6 steps forward, 4 steps back. And that's usually how it goes, which is why I always encourage you to lean into betrayed partner community, because hopefully that will be a more consistent, trustable, relaxing environment than what's going to be happening at home with your partner during the initial recovery process.
Okay, there's one in the chat. I'm going to read this one.
Okay.
Is my spouse still in denial if he says our problems are from our marriage issues and not necessarily the long-term affair and porn use? Yes, he is in denial. And how help them understand it is a pattern of behavior instead of marriage?
This is what we hear often, right? Oh, my wife is just emotionally reactive. Like, I can't come home and say anything to her because she'll just fly off the handle. So I've started to lie to her because she's so emotionally reactive. Well, if we look into the history, it's because you've also never been forthcoming and honest. And the only way she's ever found out about anything is by digging, catching you in a lie, being a detective. So one issue, right? You and your choices to lie and sneak around would not suddenly, but solve your marital problem, which is the fact that your wife is highly reactive and, sneaks around or never trusts you, right? So when you start realizing that how abusive and nefarious and traumatic these behaviors are, when you're having a long-term affair, when you're sneaking around using porn, and you realize how these things impact your relationship, it can make the changes in your relationship that will improve the marriage naturally when you start taking care of the problematic behaviors.
Yeah, and I wrote down somewhere, I do this too. I have 2 pages of notes again, but you talk specifically about this, the denial, the deflecting, blaming, relationship issues. Oh, it's our relationship. No, and Kristin said this earlier. Dr. Rob talks about you have choices. If he was unhappy with the relationship, he could have said, let's go to marriage counseling instead of using porn and having a long-term affair. How is using porn and having a long-term affair helpful to the marriage issues? Zero. It actually makes everything worse.
Right. And whenever I have clients like what you're describing or displaying for us, I say, let's triage here, right? When people go into the ER, they deal with the most serious issue that's going to kill you first. And so having that chronic affair, problematic porn use, et cetera, those are the first things. Those are like they're internally bleeding and we need to stop that. Then you can get into, and by the way, as part of you engaging in those nefarious behaviors, you created this complex trauma experience for your partner. And let's understand all of those pieces and start healing the trauma. And then down the line, we can own the fact that we are very flawed people trying to do relationships and build a life with another person. I can have really imperfect ways of communicating my feelings. I can have my own childhood trauma that, also shows up at places that are inopportune and, trigger issues in our relationships down the line when we have triaged and dealt with the most immediate issues.
Yeah. And I unfortunately often hear, well, how do I get my partner to trust me? Because that's part of our relationship issue is, she doesn't trust me. And I'm like, why would she? You've lied for years, decades, and all of a sudden now, you're showing up a little differently. And no, it's for the partner's safety that they need to hold those boundaries of really show me for over a long period of time. I said this the other day to someone too. It's like the addict betrayer has known forever that they were, cheating and lying and all that. A partner gets, hit with a cement truck with discovery. And so the time frame is completely different, but it's really all about actions. And so I'm really sorry on that particular one, but yeah, that person does not seem to be willing to step into making things different yet. I hope they change. So Kristin, we're basically out of time. We're out of questions. So I can't wait to see you again next month. And I know you'll bring more great information. So again, KristinSnowden.com. has lots of information, including betrayed partner groups, but you also do a group for men as well. So share a little bit about that too.
Well, I have a co-ed. I'm
Co-ed,
certified
I'm sorry.
in Brene Brown's Daring Way, the Daring Way, and Rising Strong material. So we do work around fears of vulnerability, shame work, shame resiliency. I think after you come out of the crisis, the immediate crisis, the triaging I was talking about, it can be really substantive for betrayed partners and anyone else who's been deeply impacted by relationship crises to do this personal work about fears of trusting, vulnerability, shame stuff, etc. And please take a minute to go to my website, KristinSnowden.com. I have a lot of free articles and resources. And as I mentioned before, check out my live workshops. And I have some opportunities to work with me one-on-one, all there accessible to you on KristinSnowden.com. Feel free to email me at KristinSnowdenMFT@gmail.com. And take a minute to subscribe to my YouTube channel on Kristin Snowden, and you will get any new videos or anything that comes up, along with joining my mailing list if you want to find out about any new workshops or events that are occurring. I do some free webinars and some free events. All right, thank you so much, and then thank you for engaging.